Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. It is Pastor Nick, and it is Monday. I am kind of excited today. I'm going to be meeting with our architect at the church. So today is a good day for me. I've been waiting for several years to kind of get cracking on the upstairs and reshaping our campus of our church and doing some new things. So I'm really excited about this. Hopefully, there'll be a lot more good news to come to all of y'all that are part of the church, as I think it will be. So, anyway, today is Marketplace Monday. I want to remind everybody, if you could share, like, when you put comments in the chat, all these things help us with getting the show out, getting it more recognition. I think that we do a lot of good work here to help people, and that's the point of it. We just want to help people get better at their jobs, get better in their careers, get better with their businesses, etc. That's the goal of this show. So if you could share the show, share it on your page, share it with a friend, tell somebody about it. All those things help us. So today's show, we're talking about knowing when it's time to move on, part 2. If you remember last week, we covered some of those, and I'll get into that. And then today we want to go on to part 2. In the meantime, also some things I want you to think about. And let me see who's on today from my creative team. Cindy's on, Mark's on. Good morning, everybody. Shanika. I don't see anybody from my creative team here. Hold on. Jeremiah's on. Okay, so I got one. Anyway, if you could, anybody who's on today, if you'd like to put in a subject that you think would be something good for us to talk about, whether it pertains to just the workplace and some things that you've been challenged with personally, or some things that people are challenged with. Doesn't have to be that you're challenged with, or even business. I'm going to really get at. Oh, Donovan's on as well. Okay, I'm going to get into talking more to this year about business and entrepreneurs. So if there are questions that come up that you would like to know, or you think would make a great subject for us to talk about on the show, you can go ahead and put those in. And Donovan, if you could make notes of those and put them into the band, that would be helpful. Okay. So anyway, I want to get started today. So again, today we're on part 2 of knowing when it's time to move on. So today, as we continue, basically just want to have a real conversation about knowing, like we said, when it is time to move on. In part 1, we talked about your environment, we talked about your treatment, and we talked about growth capacity relative to your current job. And when are the signals, if you will, that it may be time for you to move on or time for you to shift? So today, what we want to do now is we want to dig into the last 3 indicators that let us know when it's time to move on, not out of emotion, but out of godly precision. Again, not out of emotion, but out of godly precision. How do we recognize the difference between running from discomfort and stepping into divine direction? Let me say that again, because that's very important. How do we know the difference between running from discomfort, because a lot of people run from discomfort, and stepping into divine direction? Write this down. This is a quote I have for you for today. I like to give you guys these quotes just as things that, I'm always trying to write out quotes. I'm always writing them out, but just things that can kind of jog your memory so you know what to remember. Okay. Don't let your frustration make the decision your faith should be making. Don't let your frustration make the decision that your faith should be making. Okay. Because I think a lot of times when we start thinking about moving on, it's always about, us being in our feelings. I've never really talked to a lot of people that are moving on because, their job is good. They're doing good. They're being promoted. Everything's working out well. But you know what? Man, this is really interfering with what God's called me to do. I don't really, even though I like the job and I'm making good money, it's not allowing me to do some things that, I believe I need to be doing with my family. I never hear it from that perspective. I always hear it's time to move on when, oh, they didn't recognize me, or they didn't promote me, or they haven't given me a raise, or, it's always time to move on when you're on the decline. When you're on the decline. How many of you know it's better to leave a lot of times when you're ascending, right? Because maybe it's time for you to get on to something that's going to pay better. So on last Monday, we went over, these are the ones we already have covered. Number one, it's time to move on when you're no longer celebrated, but you're only tolerated, right? Staying where you're tolerated can shrink your potential. That was something that I told you. Staying where you're tolerated can sink your potential. Number two, the environment no longer supports your growth. Stagnation is a silent signal to seek alignment. Stagnation. Now, again, like I said earlier, you really need to dig into these things, because are you being stagnant because you're a Cancer and the boss don't want to use you? Are you being stagnant because you think you know everything, right? And you want to be in a position you're not qualified, or you're not ready for, or you need more development for, so your boss just don't even get you involved no more? So you got to look at both sides of these coins, and you got to really have some counsel and make sure that you're hearing from God. Number three, you've worn out your welcome. How about that? Don't overstay your welcome where grace is lifted. Sometimes your season ends before your paycheck does. Sometimes your season ends before your paycheck does. So know your season. Know if it's time for you to move on. Know if you're getting the wrong signals. Don't make people keep you. Oh, I'm going to stay here today, fire me. They're going to have to fire me. Who wants to work in that environment? Plus, that's not character and integrity. They can't fire you, so you stay. And you're not producing, and you're not being productive, and you're not winning. Who wants to be in that environment, right? So let's get on to today's. Today's number 4, and I might have hit on this a little bit last week, but I want to cover this one again because I think it's one of the most important ones. You have no exit plan or emergency fund. You got to have an exit plan. You got to have an emergency fund before you jump ship. What's the saying I gave you last week? Never jump without a parachute. Count the cost. Build a safety net, right? Wisdom prepares before the leap. You remember that? Don't get mad. Don't get upset with somebody and just quit your job. You're an adult. You're a grown-up. Oh, well, don't worry, Pastor. I got some money saved. I don't have to put up with this. Yes, you do. You know how many times I used to come home and complain to Fran about a job or this or that, and she would remind me, hey, we got kids. Hey, I know you're upset. Get looking for another job, but make sure you don't do nothing foolish. We don't need you to be without a check. We don't need to be homeless. We don't need to be on the street. You have a bigger responsibility to your family than you do. Sometimes you got to put up with some mess for a season. It's okay. You'll be all right. So number 5 for today, you're leaving for less without clear vision. You're leaving for less without clear vision. A 10% increase isn't worth it if it comes with chaos. Sometimes people just leave because they're going to get a little bit more money, but they don't recognize all the soft benefits that they get from the job that they're at. They let them leave early for Wednesday so they can get to church. They give them, if their kid has to go to the hospital, to the doctor, or something comes up, they're not constantly clocking them, right? So they give them a lot of leeway. They give them a lot of latitude at the job. Yeah, so maybe the other job's going to pay you $21 an hour versus $20 an hour, or 22. I remember one time Natifa was going to leave her job. I don't know if she's on. And I don't know what told me to tell her this, but I said, Tifa, did you do a TCO on the new job? And she's like, what do you mean? She didn't know at the time what that meant. Did you do a total cost? The job she had was literally 2 minutes from her house. The job she was going to get was all the way across town. And she was going to get like, $2 or $3 more an hour. I mean, it was back in the day. This was 10 years ago, I guess, or so, where, making the difference between 15 an hour and 18, 19 an hour was a big difference. But I asked her, I said, did you count the cost? So she got up and she drove to the new job. She noticed that driving to the new job, there was all these tolls. It was going to be a lot more gas. But even more than the tolls and gas, it was the fact that it took her 2 hours out of her day, an hour there and an hour back. It was, so when you figure in your hours of travel, your extra gas, your wear and tear on your car, and your tolls, she found out she was actually taking less money. So never, write this down, never leave stability for uncertainty without clarity and conviction. Never leave stability for uncertainty without clarity and conviction. Know where you're going. Count the cost. Do the math. All right? Number 6, you're chasing emotion, not assignment. You're chasing emotion. Write that down, not assignment. Don't confuse frustration with permission. Don't confuse frustration with permission. Seek God, don't just seek an escape. Seek God, don't just seek an escape. Right? So how do I know, Pastor, if I'm being emotional, if it's my assignment? Remember, let peace be your perfect umpire. Peace confirms. Pressure distorts. Peace confirms. Pressure distorts. Don't ever forget that. You got to have peace. If you got your wife telling you no, you got your pastor telling you no, and you're still telling them that they don't understand, you're probably the one that's wrong. You got one mentor saying, I don't know. You got your wife not comfortable. You probably need to just give it some time. If it's not emotion and you're not moving out of emotion, a little bit more time isn't going to hurt anything. A little bit more time isn't going to hurt anything. So you don't have to worry. Okay? Number 7, the best time to look is now. When you don't need a job, when you don't need a career. Always look while you're strong. Always look while you're strong. The best job offers come when you don't need them. The best job offers come when you don't need them. Search from a place of strength, not of desperation. Search from a place of strength, not of desperation. The worst time to look for a job is when you need one, when you're desperate for one. That's the worst time. So don't forget my quote for today. Don't let frustration make the decision your faith should be making. Don't ever move out of frustration. Look when it's the right time. Make sure you're checking within, right? Know when your time is up where you're at. Know when you're not being welcomed. Know when you're not being celebrated and you're just being tolerated. But make sure, double check, double check that you're not in your emotions, especially if you're an emotional person. And I'll tell you, man, a lot of people don't know when they're emotional. They don't know. Certain types of personalities are emotional. Creatives are emotional people. They need somebody. If you are a creative, if you're a designer, an artist, a singer, in the praise team, you need to have a good group of very stable decision-making people around you to help you, because you naturally slide into your emotions. It's a natural thing. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. That's why you're a creative. It just means you got to recognize where you need help. Okay. Hey, listen, don't forget, go in, put in some things that you want to hear me talk about. Maybe it has to do with starting a business, running a business things. Maybe you want to know, hey, I've been thinking about starting a business. What would I do? How do I do that? Whatever the questions are you have, or if you have questions about the job, about a career, how to do things, put those in the chat. Donovan's going to make notes and we're going to try to create some shows around those as well. Listen, thank you so much for joining. We appreciate you. Looking forward to We Wednesday. Pastor Franny's really excited about continuing taking her book apart chapter by chapter. I think she wants to kick me to the curb and start doing some shows on her own with some other guests. So that's going to be good. I'm excited about her bringing in some women to talk about the book and just what she's doing with it. It's been very helpful. Thank you all for your support for these shows and these programs. Until Wednesday, Pastor Nick saying, enjoy life.